I introduce the first presenter, I'd like to do an acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I also acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to life in our cities, towns and communities across our nation. I recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship to the lands and the seas. I extend that respect to members of the Torres Strait Islander community that are meeting with us today as well. So let's get right into it, Ben. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Tom Calma, the National Coordinator of the TIDS program, to give us an update for the TIDS program. And there might be a bit of time afterwards if you have any questions, but we'll keep an eye on that. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Maxine, and thank you, Ben, for getting the slide up. Look, can I begin also by recognising all of our country that we're on, and I'm on Ngunnawal country down here in cold old Canberra. For those that haven't met me, I've been the National Coordinator for Tackling Indigenous Smoking since the program kicked off in about 2010, and so have been here for quite a while. Ben, the next slide, please. I'm actually from Darwin, Kungarakan on my mother's side, Niwaja on my father's side, but I moved to Canberra and now live in Canberra. And can I say that it's a very sad time not being able to get back into Darwin. It's quite interesting in Canberra where we're very isolated because nobody will accept us. Recently, Brisbane stopped receiving flights from Canberra, so it's you can go there, but you've got to go into isolation for 2 weeks and so forth. So we are in very interesting times, as we all know, with COVID-19, and I'll touch a little bit on that a little bit more in the slides. But welcome everybody here, and particularly those new people who are here, and just having a quick flick through the list, and I guess we'll go through a bit later and meet a few people, but we do have quite a number of new people on the link today. And as you're probably aware, we've created 4 new remote sites, and 3 of those are in the Northern Territory. And so we've got new people here, people representing Tiwi Islands, Worley down in Katherine, and Congress in Alice Springs have also expanded their service. Thanks, Ben. This slide I just wanted and particularly I'll go through a few slides that are really for the benefit of those who are new to the program, but also it's an important reminder for those who have been here for a while, because we only get to have these jurisdictional workshops once. If we're lucky, we'll get to talk between these meetings per year. But it is a program that's been funded for 4 years. We're just commencing the last 2 years of our program in the current form that it's in. And I guess it's worth looking at, particularly for those that have been around for a long time, just a reminder that this is a population health program, which means that we're not working from any one site in the AMS, wherever we might be located, but we're an outreach service. And the whole idea is to be able to reach people who don't use medical services, which in the Territory is probably a bit unique in that most Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people will use an Aboriginal medical service, but not all. And so there's a lot of people, particularly in Darwin and in other sites, that might go straight to the hospital or go to a private GP. And so they're the sort of people we've got to reach. And it's not about just dealing with people in the AMS. But part of the program, and I'll touch on this, is really looking at how do we improve the Quitline services, working with Quitline, because we don't own them, but we support them, and Quit Skills. And a new feature of this program, more so than in past years, has been around evaluation, and it's important. Now you'll see on on a lot of my slides with information. There is a web link down below. The slides are all put up on TISRIC, so you can have a look at them later. And so I'll whip through them sometimes a bit quickly, but you've got the opportunity to ask questions now or later, but also to go onto TISRIC and further questions, you can come either directly to me or through NBPU. We all sing from the same hymn sheet. Thanks, Ben. And I just wanted to mention that we have some special targets in this program. One is pregnant women, mothers, and also people who are in the, pregnancy target area, young women particularly, and a big emphasis is on remote smokers, and you'll see why that is a bit later in one of the slides. Thanks, Ben. And as I mentioned, it's really important because we're doing evaluation and it's around about data collection and how do we get really good data to make sure that we shouldn't be thinking about this last 2 years of the program. We should be looking at the next 10 years of the program, because it's going to take at least that time, if not longer, before we reach equality in smoking outcomes. And because with the general population, they're down to smoking probably, over 10%, around about 14% of the population smoke. It gets, heavier smokers when you get into remote areas, as they are with us. But we are sitting around about 39%, or thereabouts. And so it also varies in urban areas. Less people smoke than in rural and remote areas. So they are the priority, why we have a big focus. And for the Northern Territory, we're basically all remote up there. So you are a really strong target area, and we'll be doing a lot more work in the next year or so, looking at the way we can better service and better impact on people in remote areas. Thanks, Ben. Now, this is an extract of a letter that went out to all the grant recipients when the first of the 4 years of funding came out. Again, I've already mentioned this population health, which means going out. We're looking at maximum reach. We're looking at those who don't attend AMSs. And, what the Minister also said to each of the AMSs is that, as a primary healthcare service, you should be working with people who smoke anyhow. And so he wants to see evidence on what primary healthcare funding, or what funding goes to the ARCHO, is used for things like brief intervention within the AMS, smoking cessation programs that happen within the AMS, and also integrating information about brief interventions and tackling smoking across all levels of an AMS, of a medical service. So that was what Ben, next one, and that's what we did. And we reminded the CEOs of all the services at our May workshop earlier this year, that this is part of their obligation. Thanks, Ben. Now, you've seen this slide before, but it really captures what the TIS program is about. It's about, and all the components of it. There's myself and my role as National Coordinator, which is lead and mentor, provide advice to government, do a bit of lobbying with ministers and opposition politicians and so forth. Then we have the NBPU, that is a support program for yourself, and if you're in the program, you know what NBPU's role is, and Desley leads that. We've got you guys. We had 37. It's basically 49 activities around the nation, 49 teams. It's 39 teams, but 49. Let me go again. We went from 37 to 40 teams, and that includes a little bit extra down in Congress. We also have and we support Quit Skills, which is important. And if you don't know about Quit Skills, we'll talk a bit about that a bit later. Ask a question about it, but it's a support service, and I'll touch on that. We also have Quit Line, which is run, and we support that, the Aboriginal Quit Line, and how you should be working with them. Meaning Trudy and her team down in Canberra, work and have overall management responsibility, policy responsibility for TIS, but they also have a responsibility of working with mainstream tobacco and other areas of Commonwealth health, and also interfacing with state and territory governments to make sure that we all are working together. And of course, there is a strong role between state and territory governments because they have to also address smoking. And I think that's really important to recognise, is that we are just one element, even though we're probably the biggest singly funded element of the Tackling Smoking program, Indigenous smoking at least. And it's really important that we work together. And that's part of the strategies that we have to develop at a local level. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see those little squirrely lines, and that's all about evaluation and about continual quality improvement. And that really is important because we won't be able to get future funding, or we'll have a lot of troubles getting future funding and convincing politicians to invest in our program if we don't have the data to show that we are a successful program. A lot of the data already is showing that we are a very successful Commonwealth program. Thanks, Ben. So I wanted, Lena from Circa can't present today, so I'm going to just give a quick overview of what Circa is doing. But in the evaluation, we have two parts. Circa, which is known as Part A, and ANU, and you'll hear from Raglan a bit later, so I won't cut across his turf, is Part B. But Part A is really about looking at the internal operations of the TIS teams and looking at the data that we collect. The evaluation is focused on three areas: implementation, appropriateness, and outcomes. And why I mention this is that it is so important that you all remember and recognise that data is important. So when you interact with groups and clients, we've got to be able to record that. We've got to be able to record that we are making referrals to quit lines, that we do use quit skills programs, that we are working with other programs. But we want to know how many people you're actually interfacing with. And I think that's important. And the way we do it, and you guys are selected at the local level because you have the skills. You know what your community wants and what's the best way to communicate with your communities and the people within the community. So that's really important that we look at that. So look at that. And then, of course, outcomes, and a lot of the outcome data that Lena is looking at in Circa is the data that's collected through the AMSs, through the OCA data, the NKPI data, and the data that you present back through on your performance reports and so forth. And I should have mentioned in the other slide that a strong element to this program now is, while Trudy and her team look after the policy, the FAMs look after the administration of the money, and they're from a different department. So they're also an integral part of an integrated program. And you'll see there that Circa has provided an update video where Lena will do a much better job of explaining what they do, and that's up on the TISRIC website. Thanks, Ben. So the second part of this is also on data, which I mentioned, and that there's going to be a whole program of visits that take place. And you would have already been contacted by Lena if you're in one of the target areas, but you'll see that they'll be doing phone interviews. Where possible, they'll do physical field visits and so forth. And it's not only you guys that Circa is looking at, they're looking at my role, they're looking at NBPU, quit skills, etc., etc. And next one, Ben. And this is just for those who haven't seen it. Their program for the rest of the year in what some of the sites that they're going to visit or at least interact with, and you'll see a number of you guys are mentioned there. But there will be, you'll see in September that there is going to be a look at, and even though it may be early days, look at the implementation of these new teams, how you're progressing, and making sure that there's, that you understand your role and how the data is going to be important to collect and input. And NBPU has a strong role, and when I can travel, I'll also come and visit you. Thanks. Now, this next slide is you'll hear it. This is Penny telling us all about her program.
Sorry, Tom. Penny's voiceover was removed from the presentation, but I can. If you just want.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gee whiz. Penny's here now. Penny can tell you, but this is all about the lodgement of your performance reports and the review process. But basically, yeah, just flick through the slides then, Ben. Penny's presentation, her full presentation, is also up on the TISRIC site. So it's really important, and you guys have got to, TISRIC is your reference point. Any information you need between meetings, that's where it's all held. So you have to have a look at that. But in this slide presentation, Penny, and you'll hear this on her full presentation, gives a very clear description of the process. But basically, it's as described there. The print's probably pretty small anyhow, so you're better off looking at it later. So anyhow, I wanted to just touch a little bit about COVID-19 and what it actually means to our work. And so I guess there's a lot of things, even though we can't travel, although that's only in some states in the territory where it's much more relaxed now, although we don't want to take COVID back to our remote communities. We don't want COVID in the territory anyhow. So, well done to all you guys. You've done a fantastic job. But, this is not a time for getting slack. This is a great time now because we can't do a lot of the field visits to do the planning. And so I wanted to look at some of the things to do in the next 6 and 12 months where the interaction particularly may be restricted, but maybe not so restricted in the territory. Thanks, Ben. I guess it is, the question is how can you utilise your time? I think personal development is a real great time to be able to, to understand what the program is and to get onto TISRIC, and that's personal development in itself because you understand so much about what's happening there. Thanks, Ben. Across the program, one of the big questions, and Desley and her team, Maxine, will talk to you about this, is about how do we record our activity, particularly if you're not able to get out of the office or get into the office or get into the field. So they can talk about that, but there are ways of still doing it, and particularly recording. If, like in many states, a lot of our teams are working remotely, they're working electronically, so they're running sessions in classrooms, but they're not going and personally delivering, they're delivering it over the internet. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. Probably not so appropriate in the territory, but let's not forget that a lot of people, a lot of our mob can access internet and either on their phones or at home. So, but that's not the be all end all. Physical face-to-face is always a good opportunity, but if you can't do it, we can still report on the activity that you're doing. Thanks, Ben. The other one, and this is what I used at the beginning of the process, whether we need any additional support, which I guess everybody is now familiar with it. If you're not, bad luck. Maybe the new people that are just coming on, the new teams, might need a bit of support, but Desley's team is across all that. Thanks, Ben. Being creative and innovative in what we do is really important. The famous TikTok, or is it TikTok? Or whatever that dance and creating videos and so forth are all good medium to get our mob involved. And, there's a lot of interactive opportunities that we can use, over the internet, be they Zoom or other activities. Thanks, Ben. And of course, it's a great opportunity to sit down and understand the communities you need to service. And I'll touch a bit more on that a bit later, but that's a great opportunity now to understand and to plan make sure that you know, we have the most significant impact that we can have in the communities. And lastly, is to Ben, to remember that both MBPU and myself are there if you need to have a chat about anything. But you know, the importance is don't keep it to yourself. If you need to have a talk, get clarification, you know, utilise the support systems that are out there. Okay, thanks, Ben. Now, Raglan may talk a bit more about this, but this is just a quick slide to show that, you know, over the last couple of decades, we have seen an improvement in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander smoking, a decrease in smoking, but that has basically been in the non-remote areas. And you can see in remote areas, which is a green graph, it's basically flatlined, and that's why we've got to put every bit of effort to make sure that we start to get that downward trajectory like we are in urban areas. But, you know, that's Raglan will talk about that a bit more. Next one, Ben, thanks. You know, what's also very important, and it's just happened, is that we've got this 12.5% excise increase, and you can see over the years, as that excise has increased, and that's brought up the price of cigarettes. And every stick nowadays is roughly $1. So, you know, it's important to remind people that, you know, you might as well be flicking $1 into the ocean, because every time you have a cigarette, that's you're kissing goodbye, at least $1. In some remote areas, it's even more than that. So ours is not just a focus on the health implications of smoking, but to remind people that there is a very big financial cost to smoking. And the good thing is, as the excises have increased, that's also had an impact on people's referral to quittlines and their consideration to want to give up smoking. And, you know, and David Thomas, I think, is presenting a bit later in the program. I hope David will talk a bit about, you know, now's a good time while the stresses are there, that evidence is showing that, you know, people under stress shouldn't be smoking more, but they should be using that as an opportunity to give up smoking. And he's got a bit of evidence on that. Okay, thanks, Ben. Oh, yeah, you know, that's just the same thing. So the next one is really one to have a study about, because we don't recognise, you know, I didn't realise that, you know, if you're a packet of smoker a day, and this is when packets of smokes are only $40 a packet, over the year, you spend the equivalent of what you would get if you're on a pension, if you're on youth allowance or any Centrelink payment. You're basically spending the equivalent per year on cigarettes as what you're getting through your pension. So that's a really stark reminder to people that, you know, this has a big economic impact. And you know, the less money we have, the more stress we feel with the you know, the inability to be able to purchase other things for the family and so forth. So the economic impact of smoking is really important. And of course, you know, always important to remind our mob, and I don't have a slide on this, but you know, cigarettes have a very, very big environmental impact. And we've got to remember that cigarette butts and the paper wrappings and that, paper wrappings may disintegrate over time. Cigarette butts don't. They can pollute the water. Animals, reptiles, fish and so forth can eat them, and that can kill them. So if we really believe in land and culture, we've got to remember we shouldn't be flicking our butts around. You know, let's just give up smoking full time. Okay, next one, Ben. Yeah. One of the big target areas that, and you'll hear a bit more about this in the coming months, but just a reminder that, you know, we have all these organisations that are registered under ORIC, and you can see in the territory of the, you know, this is just out of the ORIC yearbook. You can see where all those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations, or Aboriginal organisations primarily in the territory, are located. And, you know, they should be ones who we target, because if we can target them and get them to have good smoke-free policies, then that goes a long way to addressing, you know, the overall objectives of our program. And I know that a number of you have been working, but I can guarantee that we have not made contact with every one of those Aboriginal organisations in the Territory. But remember that they exist. They're all listed in the ORIC yearbook, and so you can easily find them, and you should, as part of your planning, identify who they are and go and have a chat to them and work out how you can work with them to develop up a smoke-free policy, to be able to refer them on to Quitline for the supports, to be able to refer them to your medical services, to get NRT supports and brief interventions, to be able to refer them on to Quitline and to Quit Skills. And, you know, all free services that our mob are eligible for. So they're not doing it on their own. There's a lot of support around. Thanks, Ben. Again, just a reminder, particularly for the new people, that we have the MBPU puts out their monthly newsletter, and we also have a TISRIC communique, which goes out to organisations, government departments, etc. Thanks, Ben. Next one. I didn't recognise that slide, the next one, but anyhow, that was tricky. Again, TISRIC, this is you know, Health Infonet, what we got up there, and all the various services, and again, that's your reference site. Thanks, Ben. And I know that you know, people are using the yarning place. Beverly tells me it's got, you know, growing by the day, which is absolutely fantastic, because that's the opportunity for you guys to get together and share ideas and to learn from each other and to raise topics and raise, you know, if there's something you want to know and you think others might want to know, let Desley know, and they'll organise a webinar or a discussion to be able to go through and do it. And as Desley just said, there's over 130 registered members of TISRIC, and so, you know, that is a really of the yarning places, sorry, and that's a really go-to place. So utilise it, understand that it's there, and it's part of your job, you know, to be able to go on. Now, what we've heard in the past is that some organisations have restricted access to multimedia and to these sites. If that's the case in your organisation, you must let Desley or Maxine know, because we will go and talk to the CEO and let them know that this is part of their responsibility to give you access and to make sure that this is business orientated, and so it's a part of your business, and that we aren't and we shouldn't be constrained totally by what the policy might be for an AMS, because our role is different, and that we are an entity within a host organisation, but we need to be able to work with our communities. Thanks, Ben. There's also some great resources, and this was really about COVID when it first started, but you know, we can keep your eye out on the IHA, on NATSIWA, you know, newsletters, NACHO newsletters. They often talk about you know, webinars that go on, which are really good opportunities to learn a bit more about what's happening in, you know, across all the services. But you can also create, and if you need support, NBPU can assist you in creating webinars and sharing them amongst ourselves. And you'll see a bit later that we're going to do a bit of that ourselves within the TIS program, is running some interactive sessions where we can all share information and to learn from each other. Thanks, Ben. This one I won't go into. It's just a great little video that I found that is a good one to have a look at yourselves, but also share it when you're going out to a group and you've got the opportunity to be able to share this, because it just shows you the impact of smoking, you know, a pack a day and what it means to your lungs. So just have a look at it in your own time a bit later. Thanks, Ben. a reminder that we have got a lot of information that's continually being developed, you know, about, and these are official sites that you've got to go to, because there's a lot of BS floating around there about coronavirus and smoking, and that if you're a smoker, you're more immune to getting coronavirus. That is BS. So, you know, go to the official sites, and that'll tell you what you have to be look out for. But to know that you know, smokers are compromised because it affects our lungs, our heart, and you know, totally you know, our circulatory system. And so that is also what's affected and targeted by the coronavirus. So yeah, we are, and why it's important that we do avoid getting coronavirus. So, but the territory is good anyhow. Thanks, Ben. And of course, there's just some more resources that have been developed, particularly from our mob. But you'll see that, you know, the IHA website, the NATSIWA, the Go Dewey website have got a ton of information that we can all use about our social emotional well-being and understanding about, you know, the impacts of coronavirus. How do we cope with isolation and so forth? So have a look at those resources, not only for yourselves, but to be able to share with family and other people we interact with. Thanks, Ben. And it's also, this is a UK study which showed that with coronavirus, there's a lot more people interested in quitting because of the compromised immunity that they have as smokers. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Now, just I want to whip through these next couple of slides. World No Tobacco Day this year was all about saying, look, big tobacco is trying to influence our kids, and so you know, to take up smoking, if not cigarettes. You can have a look at that. That's all up there on World No Tobacco Day. But the next bit, Ben, is the important one, and that's in relation to big tobacco and vaping. And there's a lot of, you know, stories about vaping is good for harm minimisation and to be able to use as an opportunity to give up smoking. That's you know, really questionable. The Australian government doesn't support vaping as a method of giving up smoking, or vaping full stop, because we don't know enough about the detrimental impacts of vaping. And the vaping industry and big tobacco are really out there to promote, you know, vaping. Now, what we have to remember is that a lot of the vaping products are actually owned by tobacco companies, and so it's important. This is just one of the emails that's circulating around, and if you get these sort of emails, really appreciate if you can bring it to our attention, to my attention, or to Desley, who'll get it up to us and the NBPU team, because it's important we get to understand. Don't think that you're doing the right thing because you get invited to participate in these harm minimisations. That's just a hook to get you going. And there's another one, thanks, Ben, that's, oh, well, if you look at it, I'll just look at these three things. Yeah, go again. You know, they talk about harm minimisation. They talk about, you know, undertaking, you know, the research, but they also declare that this company is funded by big tobacco, and, you know, which is an important declaration on there. And so the next one, Ben, yeah, and this is the other letter that's floating around from Philip Morris and the Philip Morris Institute, all about studying, and this is targeting our organisations. So if you get these, please let us know, and you know, and don't get involved in them, because they're really about how do they link you there, and they'll offer you every incentive to get involved, but don't fall sucker to it in this program. We're about you know, smoking cessation and population health approach. We're not about, you know, hooking people up to vaping as a harm minimisation strategy. So, you know, that's really important to understand. We do not promote vaping. We do not encourage vaping. You cannot use any of our TIS funding to support anything to do with vaping or NRTs, in fact, but that's another story. Okay, Ben. You know, important just to focus on COVID-19, and I love this slide of what is showing is that since we've had COVID-19, because we wash our hands, we social distance, we're staying healthier, the common flu is right down. I haven't got it. I haven't got COVID either. But the common flu is way down. So that's important. So the messaging that we've got to look at out there is that if we get the opportunity, encourage people to keep up the hygiene, the social distancing, even after threats of COVID are over, because staying healthy means that we're not going to be impacted across a whole lot of other areas, and getting off tobacco is also a great way to stay healthy. Thanks, Ben. This is just one of the resources that's available, and looking at our mental health and our social emotional wellbeing. They're on the Gaia Dewey website. The link's there. Have a look at them. There's a whole range of different resources. And this is what I mentioned a bit earlier, that, you know, we've got to see these things in totality. We've got to know that there's a lot of support out there for not only yourselves, but to be able to share with others, because, you know, we're in the great opportunity that we are population health. We can talk to big groups, and that's our target. So the more you know, the more knowledge you can impart to other people. Okay, Ben, I think we're almost there. Yep, well, that's it from me. Thank you, and hopefully I'm not too much over time, but to know that we are a resource. I'm available, MVP is available, and make sure you utilise us, because, you know, you're as good as you're able to be informed. And but we also value your input to us to say, this is what we need to do. This is a way to go, because don't think about the here and now, even though that's important. Think that we need to be positioning ourselves to get government to fund us for the next decade and more. Okay, thanks.